I never believed in ghost stories. That was until I took a solo hike through the old Pine Hollow Trail. It's deep in the Appalachian region, isolated, quiet, almost untouched. Locals warn against camping there. They say the trees whisper at night, and those who hear them never come back the same. I thought it was just superstition. I'm an avid hiker. I've done solo treks across 3 states. This was supposed to be just another mark on the map. I arrived on a Friday afternoon. The sun filtered through the thick canopy, casting long shadows on the forest floor. I felt alive with every step. The trail hadn't seen much use. Overgrown roots, decaying trail markers, and silence so deep you could hear your heartbeat. That night, I set up camp beneath a thicket of tall, ancient pines. Their trunks were massive, like watchful giants. The first strange thing happened just after midnight. I woke up to the sound of whispering. Not wind, not animals, sexual voices. Faint, like someone speaking through cupped hands right next to my ear. Yet far away, the whispers were unintelligible. Just sibilant murmurs, ebbing and flowing. I unzipped my tent and stepped out. The woods were dead silent. No wind, no crickets, no rustling leaves. Only that stifling, unnatural stillness. And then I noticed the trees. All the pine needles pointed down, not just hanging, but drooping unnaturally, like they were listening. I didn't sleep much that night. The next day, I tried to shake it off. I convinced myself it was a dream. I hiked deeper, following a part of the trail that wasn't on any official map. Something about it called to me. Around mid-afternoon, I found an old wooden sign nailed to a tree. Camp Selwyn, closed 1956. There was nothing about it online, but the trail led right toward it. I followed. About an hour later, I found what was left of the camp. Rotten cabins overgrown with vines, a moss-covered flagpole, and a broken bell. I wandered into one of the building's Miss Hall. On the wall, scratched into the wood, were the words, "Don't listen to them, they lie." I felt cold. The air grew heavier, thicker with every breath. Then I heard it again. Whispers, this time louder, clearer. They came from every direction, surrounding me like a circular chant. Still too soft to make out the words, but unmistakably voices. I spun around, flashlight cutting through dust and cobwebs. There was no one there, but I knew something was. Ran back to my camp. That night, I tried to leave, packed everything, and headed back toward my car. But the trail didn't look the same. Markers were missing. Trees looked unfamiliar. I checked my GPS, no signal. My compass spun wildly in my hand. And then I heard footsteps, soft, deliberate, and not my own. I turned. In the distance, standing between the trees, was a figure. Tall, thin, unmoving. I could barely make it out, but its face, it wasn't right. It didn't have one. Just bark, like a mask carved from the forest itself. I blinked, and it was gone. I ran, tripped, got up, ran again. I didn't stop until I collapsed near the creek I passed on the first day. I set up camp there, too afraid to continue in the dark. At 3:08 a.m., I woke up, not from a sound, not from a dream, from the whisper. Inside my tent, I couldn't move. It was like my limbs were frozen, my breath caught in my throat, inches from my face. In the darkness, I heard it speak. "You shouldn't have listened." My flashlight turned on by itself. The beam pointed directly at the tent wall and cast 2 shadows inside, mine and something taller standing over me. The pine needles above my tent began falling, raining down like brittle confetti, and I realized something horrifying. There was no wind. I don't remember what happened next. I must have passed out. When I woke up, it was morning. My gear was scattered. My boots were gone. So were the footprints I'd left. Like the forest had erased them. It took me nearly 11 hours to find my way back to the car. But I kept dreaming of that voice, that faceless thing in the trees, and the whispers. They followed me. Sometimes, when I'm alone in my apartment, I still hear them in the walls. I looked into Camp Selwyn later. Turns out, it was shut down after 6 campers went missing in 1956. They searched for weeks. All they ever found were shoes stripped clean and a spiral pattern of pine cones arranged outside one of the cabins. I found those same spiral patterns in the dirt outside my tent the next morning. I never hike alone anymore, and I never ever listen when the wind carries voices in the trees, because they're not the wind. Story 2. The deer that watched me sleep. When I was 20, I spent a summer volunteering at a wildlife refuge deep in Oregon. The place was surrounded by acres of dense forest, mostly untouched and strangely quiet. We lived in small wooden cabins, no internet, no cell service, just nature, isolation, and work. The locals often talked about the old deer in the woods, a white stag, majestic, massive, too large to be real. They called it an omen. They said if you saw it, it meant the woods had noticed you and that it never forgot. I always thought it was just folklore, a ghost story to pass the time, until the night it stood outside my window. It started with the sounds. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to this strange clicking noise, like someone tapping their teeth together slowly. Click, 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 click. I sat up in bed, heart pounding. The forest around the cabin was pitch black. We weren't allowed to keep outside lights on, so we didn't disturb the wildlife. But there was something out there. I got up, crept to the window, and peeked through the thin curtain. There, in the dark, about 10 feet from my window, was a deer. A buck, but not like any I'd seen before. Its body was unusually tall, its spine arched like it was straining to hold itself up. Its legs were unnaturally long and thin, like stilts. Its fur was patchy and dirty, and its eyes, God, its eyes, not the glossy, wide animal eyes you'd expect, but sunken, hollow, like two pits of darkness. And it was staring directly at me, not moving, not blinking, just standing, head slightly cocked. Click, 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 click. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen. Eventually, it walked away, not ran, not trotted, just turned, step by rigid step, and disappeared into the tree line. The next morning, I told one of the other volunteers about it. Her name was Kim. She was local and grew up around here. When I described what I saw, her face went pale. She looked me dead in the eyes and whispered, "It saw you." I laughed it off nervously, but she didn't. She told me not to look at it if it came back. Don't let it know you see it. If it thinks you're asleep, it won't touch you. But if it knows you're watching. She didn't finish the sentence. That night, I couldn't sleep. I left the curtain closed, but kept glancing at it every few minutes. Around 3 a.m., the clicking started again. Click, click, closer this time. I held my breath and lifted the curtain just a crack. It was back, closer now, right at the window. So close, its breath fogged the glass. Its head twitched occasionally, jerking like it was glitching. The antlers were wrong to bend and twisted, almost like branches. It was still clicking, and I realized something horrifying. Its mouth wasn't moving. The sound wasn't from its teeth. The clicking was coming from inside its body, like bones grinding or joints snapping in rhythm. I ducked away and got back in bed. I covered myself with a thin blanket and kept still. My heart pounded in my chest, but I remembered what Kim had said. Don't let it know you see it. I stayed like that for hours, listening to the clicking circle the cabin. At some point, I must have fallen asleep from exhaustion. When I woke up, there were hoof prints around the entire cabin, deep ones, and not deer-sized, human-sized, but split like hooves. Kim was gone. She never came back that day, or the day after. The refuge staff called the local sheriff, and they searched the woods. They found her backpack at the edge of the forest, and a trail of broken tree limbs leading into a darker, thicker patch of woods we were never supposed to go near. They never found her. I was sent home early, traumatized, jumpy, and sleep-deprived. I still have dreams of that deer, of its eyes, its movements, that damn clicking sound. I tried researching folklore, anything about deer spirits, forest omens, shapeshifters. One thing stood out, a native legend about a creature that takes the form of wounded animals to lure humans into the trees. They say it chooses who it watches, and once it does, it follows you, waits for you to be alone, watches you sleep. Sometimes I wake up at night and think I hear it again. again. Click, click outside my window, waiting. If you think the horror ends here, you're wrong. Tell me, what would you have done differently? Drop your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe for more true nightmares from the shadows. New terror drops every week. Welcome to Fear and Tale. Story 3. I found a trail that wasn't on any map last fall. I took a solo backpacking trip through Pine Ridge National Forest. I'm no stranger to hiking, been doing it since I was a kid, but this trip was meant to be different. I was going off-grid. No signal, no GPS, just me, a map, and the wilderness. The official trails were well marked and easy to follow, but about 3 days into the trip, something caught my eye. While hiking up a wooded hill, I noticed a strange break in the trees, like a tunnel of dark green. It was almost inviting. I pulled out my map. No trail was marked there, not even a faint one. I probably should have turned back, but curiosity is a hell of a thing. So I decided to check it out. The path was narrow, just wide enough for one person to walk. Fallen leaves muffled my steps, and I immediately felt the temperature drop. It was subtle at first, but the deeper I went, the more wrong everything felt. The trees looked different, twisted, gnarled. They leaned in, almost as if they were whispering to each other. The birdsong that filled the rest of the forest was gone. It was completely, unnaturally silent. After walking maybe 20 minutes, I noticed something up ahead, an old wooden trail marker. It was half frayed and splintered, but there was a word carved into it. Hollow. That word chilled me. It wasn't the name of any known trail, not in any guidebook, not in any map, but something about it felt familiar, like I'd heard it in a dream or maybe a nightmare. I should have turned back, but I didn't. I kept going. About half an hour in, I came across a cabin. It looked abandoned, weather-worn, windows broken, covered in moss. Yet there were no signs of decay. No spiderwebs, no leaves gathered at the door, like it had been placed there. I approached cautiously, knocking on the door just in case. No answer. The door creaked open on its own. Inside was a single room, a small wooden bed, a table, a lantern, and hundreds of drawings nailed to the walls. Childlike sketches, stick figures, trees, suns. But one image kept repeating over and over. A man with no face, tall, long arms. Just a vague outline of a person standing among trees. Some drawings had red scribbles over the eyes. Others show the figure standing at the foot of a bed or behind someone in the woods. I turned to leave, but on the back of the door was another carving. Fresh. You came. It's watching now. But the trees had shifted. The path behind me was gone. I swear it's the way I came in was sealed off. Branches scratched at my arms as I pushed forward blindly. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. Not animal sounds, human, slow, deliberate. I didn't look back. Eventually, I stumbled into a clearing. The sun had nearly set. I collapsed, gasping, heart hammering. Then I noticed something even worse. My footprints, dozens of them, leading in every direction around the clearing. I wasn't the first person here. I wasn't even the only one today. I sat there until nightfall, listening to the forest breathe around me. That's when I saw the lantern, just a soft, flickering glow between the trees. Then another and another. They weren't floating, they were being carried. I could see the outline of people holding them, walking slowly in single file, but their heads hung too low, as if broken. None of them made a sound, and at the back of the line it walked, taller than the rest, almost touching the canopy. No face, just a smooth, featureless head, its arms dragged behind it. Every few steps it would twitch violently, like something was trying to move inside its skin. I couldn't breathe. I shut my eyes, told myself it wasn't real. When I opened them, the lanterns were gone, and the woods were silent again. Eventually, I wandered, stumbled, really, till I hit a trail I recognized. I followed it for what felt like hours until I made it back to my campsite. I packed everything and hiked the entire night out of the woods, not stopping once. When I finally reached the ranger station the next morning, I tried explaining what happened. The ranger, an older man with tired eyes, didn't even blink. He just said, "You found the hollow." I asked him what it was. He didn't answer. He just said, "It finds people who think they're alone." I never told anyone else, never went back. But sometimes, late at night, I hear the footsteps again. And once, just once, I saw a flicker of lantern light outside my window. I closed the curtains and didn't look. And I never hike off map anymore. Story 4. Whispers beneath the moss. I used to work with a remote forest conservation group in northern Oregon. We spent weeks at a time in untouched woodland, logging plant growth, tracking animals, and ensuring the health of ancient protected regions. There was one area we were strictly told to avoid, Hollowroot Basin. It was marked on no official maps. Not even our internal GPS trackers would register that zone. Our team lead simply said, "There's nothing there. Don't go looking for it." Naturally, that made me curious. On our 13th day in camp, I woke up before dawn and wandered a bit past our perimeter to collect moss samples. That was my job, lichen and moss data collection. I was following a tree line when I spotted it. A narrow, dark path sloping downward. Everything was overgrown, but the trail was there, unmistakable. The trees bent over it like ribs. The air smelled stale and damp like a root cellar. I didn't plan to go far, just enough to satisfy the gnawing curiosity in my chest. As I stepped onto the trail, the temperature dipped. I started noticing patches of bright green moss on the trees, much thicker, almost like velvet. It pulsed slightly under my fingertips when I touched it, like something living beneath it was breathing. I tried to scrape some off with my sample tool, but the moment my blade touched it, a shrill whining erupted from the forest, like metal scraping against bone. It stopped as suddenly as it started. I should have turned back then, but I was already drawn in. Further down the trail, I found a clearing. It was completely overgrown in that vivid green moss on the trees, the rocks, even over a dozen wooden crosses half buried in the soil. Grave markers. I stood frozen. There was no record of any burial site in this region. The forest here was supposedly untouched by settlers or logging, so who was buried here? I crouched to inspect one of the crosses. It had a word carved into it in jagged, erratic handwriting. Listen. That's when I heard the first whisper. It was right next to my ear. A dry, papery voice said, "Do you hear them yet?" I spun around. No one there. I tried to back away, but my foot sank slightly into the moss. I looked down and saw something moving underneath it. Not roots, not worms, fingers, pale and thin, wriggling slowly beneath the surface. I screamed and ran. Branches clawed at my face as I fled back down the trail. I didn't know where I was going anymore. The trees all looked the same. The path had vanished. That's when I noticed the whispers weren't just near me anymore. They were inside my head. "She woke us. We missed the cold. Bury her with us." I stumbled, fell. My hands landed on the moss again. I could feel the heartbeat beneath its low rhythmic. The ground was alive. It didn't want me to leave. That's when I saw a figure ahead of me. It was standing perfectly still between two trees, cloaked in moss. I thought it was a person at first, maybe another conservationist. But then I noticed it had no face, just a smooth green surface like moss stretched tight over a skull. It tilted its head at me, and I heard a voice echoing in my bones. "Lie still. Let it take root." I turned and ran the opposite direction. No path, no direction. I just ran until my legs gave out. When I finally burst into our base camp, I collapsed in front of the tent, covered in cuts and moss spores. My teammates found me hours later, shaking, eyes bloodshot. I told them I got lost, said nothing about the trail, the clearing, or the voices. But that night, I heard it again. The whisper, "You left us lonely." I didn't sleep once during the remaining 4 nights in the woods. I left with the first transport chopper and never went back. But here's the worst part. 3 months ago, I started noticing something strange growing in my apartment. Patches of moss along the corners of my bedroom window, near the sink and under my bed. No matter how often I scraped wipe it off, it comes back, thicker, lusher, and at night, when the house is quiet and the city sleeps, I still hear them whispering. If you think the horror ends here, you're wrong. Tell me, what would you have done differently? Drop your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe for more true nightmares from the shadows. New terror drops every week. Welcome to Fear and Tale. Story 5. The Woman in the Tree Hollow. It started as an innocent hike. I had just moved to a small mountain town in Oregon, hoping to escape the chaos of city life. Everyone in town told me the nearby Waverly Forest was peaceful, quiet, and good for the soul. So, on my third day there, I decided to explore it. About 2 hours into the trail, I noticed something odd. The trees seemed unnatural, not in shape or size, but in behavior. They leaned inward slightly, like they were listening. I brushed it off as paranoia and kept walking until I came upon a massive rotted tree near the center of the forest. Its trunk was split down the middle, forming a dark hollow just large enough for a person to crawl inside. Curious, I leaned closer. That's when I saw her, a woman, not sitting or standing, but wedged deep inside the hollow. Her eyes were wide open, lips curled into a soft smile. Her skin looked like bark, as if the tree had started absorbing her. I stumbled back in horror. Then she blinked just once. I screamed and ran back the way I came. I don't know how long I ran. My watch had stopped working sometime during the hike. I tripped, fell, scraped my knees and hands on roots that hadn't been there before. I finally made it out, shaking and bloodied. When I told the locals at the diner what I saw, the place went dead silent. An older woman, maybe in her 70s, leaned over to me and said, "You saw the tree bride." I asked her what that meant. She told me the story. Decades ago, a young woman named Eliza Merrill went missing in Waverly Forest the night before her wedding. Her fiancé's family and dozens of townsfolk searched for her for weeks, but never found a trace. Eventually, they gave up, assuming she'd run off. But the forest knew better. Years later, hikers claimed to see a woman inside a tree, always the same hollow, always smiling. Some said she was humming. Others swore she whispered their names. Over time, locals started calling her the tree bride, but no one believed the stories anymore. Until now, I didn't sleep that night. I kept seeing her eyes, so calm, so empty, and then the dreams began. In them, I was walking through Waverly Forest again. Only this time, the trees whispered to me, "Bring her back." I'd wake up with dirt under my nails, splinters in my fingers. Once, I found leaves in my hair, but I hadn't left my apartment. The next week, I tried to go back to the hollow, thinking I could prove she was real. I brought my phone for photos, but I never found it. The tree, it was gone. In its place stood a cluster of saplings. Still, I could feel her watching. Later that night, I heard scratching in my walls. When I pressed my ear to them, I heard it clearly. A woman softly humming, the melody from my dreams. By the third week, my hands began peeling. The skin flaked like bark, and my fingernails turned gray at the edges. I visited a doctor, no diagnosis. I visited a priest. He gave me a small cross and told me to pray. Nothing worked. Then, on the fourth night of no sleep, I woke up standing in the middle of Waverly Forest. I was barefoot, bleeding, and just ahead of me, that tree. It had returned, wider now, open, inviting, and inside, I saw myself. Not just a reflection, another version of me, smiling, calm. Her arms were open. The trees whispered again. She was lonely. I don't remember how I got home, but I've made my decision. If you find this journal and you're thinking of going to Waverly Forest, don't. She's waiting in the hollow, and now, so am I. Story 6. The cabin that appeared after midnight. They say you can't find the cabin unless it wants to be found. I didn't believe it till it found me. It happened during a weekend camping trip in the Eldon Pines, a thick, endless forest at the base of the Rocky Mountains. I went with my two close friends, Mark and Jess, and we brought the usual gear: tents, coolers, flashlights, and just enough alcohol to forget cell service didn't reach out here. The first night went fine. We pitched our tents, built a fire, and told dumb stories while the stars blinked overhead. The second night, things changed. It was 12:03 a.m. when Jess noticed the light. A dim glow, barely visible through the trees, like a single lantern swinging in the dark. "Someone's out there," she whispered. Mark stood up, squinting. "There's no one else camping nearby." I checked the entire map. That side of the forest is undeveloped, but the light was there. Against our better judgment, we followed it, way through the underbrush, stepping over roots and ducking beneath low branches. The forest felt heavier, thicker, somehow, as if it didn't want us moving forward. That's when we saw it. A cabin. It was small and ancient-looking, with moss-covered shingles and warped wooden panels that sagged like tired skin. A single oil lamp glowed in the front window. The strangest part, none of us had seen it the night before when we hiked this exact path. "Where the hell did this come from?" I asked. Mark was already walking toward it. "Maybe someone built it recently." Jess grabbed his arm. "It wasn't here. There were no structures marked in this area." I double-checked the ranger map. He shrugged her off. "You two can stay here. I'm going in." Jess cursed behind us, but came to. The inside was worse. The cabin smelled old. Not just dusty or moldy, but ancient, like the smell of graves. Every piece of furniture looked hand-carved and wrung off-kilter chairs, table with 6 legs, walls covered in paintings that looked more like screams than art. A fireplace crackled, even though no one was inside to tend it. And then we heard the door slam shut behind us. Jess ran back to open it, but it wouldn't budge. "Locked," she hissed. "What the hell?" Then came the footsteps from the hallway, heavy, slow, something dragging its feet. Mark picked up a fire poker, his knuckles white. We backed into the corner, heartbeats pounding in our ears. A figure stepped into the room, but it wasn't a person. It looked like one at first, but its proportions were wrong, its limbs too long, its head slightly tilted, as if the neck was broken, and its face was a mirror, but glass, with something moving behind it, like a trapped animal trying to claw its way out. It didn't speak, it only pointed to us, and then it vanished, not walked away, just blinked out like a frame missing from a reel of film. We tried the door again. This time it opened. We ran back through the forest, back to the fire that had long since died out. We packed up what little we had left and didn't speak until sunrise. We left the forest that morning. None of us mentioned the cabin again. For a few weeks, things returned to normal until Mark went missing. The police found his apartment empty. His phone, keys, and wallet were still on the table. Jess and I met up the day we heard. "I think it's the cabin," she whispered. "I think it took him." I wanted to disagree. I wanted to laugh it off, but the truth was clawing at my throat. She was right. That night, I couldn't sleep. Around midnight, I looked out my apartment window, and there it was, the cabin, sitting across the street in the middle of the city, its single lantern glowing in the front window. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, looked again. It was gone. But now I see it everywhere. Sometimes in alleyways, sometimes reflected in windows. Once, I swear, it was in my bathroom mirror, just for a second. Jess won't return my calls anymore. I think she's next. I don't know what the cabin is, if it's alive, if it feeds, but I know it moves. It watches, and I know this. You don't find the cabin, it finds you. So if you're out in the woods after midnight and you see a light in the trees, don't follow it. Because once you enter the cabin, part of you never leaves. Story 7. The Screaming Stones of Raven's Thicket. Raven's Thicket wasn't on any modern map. Not Google, not Apple, not even the dusty topo charts the rangers used. The place was said to be cursed ground, where nothing grew right and people went to disappear. As a folklore grad student chasing obscure legends for my thesis, that made it irresistible. My professor warned me, some forests don't want to be documented, and some stories don't want to be told. But I didn't listen. I drove out to Carroll Bend in early fall when the trees were bleeding red and gold. I asked around about Raven's Thicket, got blank stares and muttered prayers. In return, the only person who talked was a gaunt old man behind the counter at the gas station. "You want Raven's Thicket?" he asked, not blinking. I nodded. He handed me a hand-drawn map. "You'll know you're close when the forest goes quiet. No birds, no wind, just stillness. That's where the stones scream." I thought it was a metaphor. It wasn't. It took me nearly 5 hours of hiking to reach the place. The forest changed exactly as the old man said. One moment, I was surrounded by chirping and rustling leaves. Then, nothing. A sudden vacuum of sound, so complete it made my eardrums ache. Then, I saw the stones, dozens of them, ancient, moss-covered, monoliths poking from the earth like crooked teeth. Some were tall and thin, others hunched like deformed statues. None looked natural. I walked among them, recording with my field mic, taking photos, whispering observations. That's when I noticed something deeply wrong. The photos. No matter how many I took, the stones didn't show up. Just blurry trees. No shapes, no shadows, just absence. Then the screaming started. Not loud, not at first. A low whine, like metal twisting far off between the trees. I thought it was winded. I realized the trees weren't moving. The sound grew, becoming something more human, agonized, like dozens of people screaming all at once, but far away, like underwater. I backed away, heart racing. Then one of the stones moved. It shifted, turned toward me, and I swear I saw an eye blink on its surface. I ran. I didn't look back, not even when the screaming followed me like an echo in my skull. My compass spun uselessly, and every direction looked the same. Somehow, after hours, minutes, time felt twisted die, burst through a line of trees and fell onto the trail I came in on. Silence, birdsong returned, and the leaves rustled in the breeze again. I didn't stop running until I got back to my car. Back home, I tried to play the audio from my recorder. Nothing, just silence. No footsteps, no voice memos, no scream. Then, at the 5-minute mark, a whisper. Just one sentence in a dozen layered voices. "You took one with you." I dropped the recorder. My phone hasn't worked since that day. My mirrors distort my face in strange ways, and sometimes when I close my eyes, I feel a cold presence hovering just behind me watching. I think it's the stone, the one that moved. I didn't just escape the thicket. It followed me out. Story 8 from the Forest Horror Series, the last trail marker before you vanish. Every national park has its secrets. Missing persons, strange lights, tracks that lead nowhere. I was a volunteer search and rescue worker in the Northern Cascades, and even we had a rule: if you reach a trail marker with no number, turn back. It was a legend passed down among Rangers. Nobody ever really explained. Just a nod, a look, a firm warning. At first, I thought it was a joke, another wilderness myth. Then I found the unmarked post myself. It started with a hiker reported missing on the Broken Antler Trail. A solo backpacker named Chris DeMarco, 28, fit, experienced no reason to vanish, but vanish he did. I was partnered with Lisa, a veteran ranger who'd been in the park longer than some of the trees. After 6 hours of searching, we hadn't found any sign of him. Then it started to snow in October. That was wrong. No snow in this region for at least another month usually. Lisa paused. "You hear that?" I strained. Nothing. No birds. Then I saw it up ahead, nailed into a crooked trail marker. No number, no symbol, just a blank, worn slab of metal. "That's it," Lisa whispered, suddenly pale. "We're done." "What?" She turned and started walking fast in the opposite direction. "We go back now." But I didn't move. Something about the marker pulled at me like gravity. I walked toward it, ignoring the rising cold. "Don't," Lisa shouted, voice sharp with something I'd never heard from her before, fear. But I crossed the tree line anyway. The temperature dropped 10 degrees, and the forest changed. The trees were wrong. Too tall, too dense. Their bark looked veined, almost like skin. Behind me, nothing. Lisa was gone. So was the trail. I tried to call out, but the sound of my voice was muffled, like screaming underwater. My GPS flickered and died. My compass spun. The snow got heavier, but it didn't fall like snow. It drifted in reverse, curling upward. I walked. I don't know how long, hours maybe. Then I found another trail marker. Same as before. No number, no symbol, except this one had a handprint on it. Not painted, pressed into the metal, burned in. Human-sized, but wrong. Too long, fingers bent backward. I kept going against every instinct. Eventually, I found what I thought was a campsite, but it wasn't Chris's. It looked ancient, tense, torn and rotted. Gear rusted through, overgrown with vines. There was no way this had been here long, yet the snow didn't cover it. Then I heard the voice. Help me. Soft, fragile, coming from deeper in the trees. Chris, I called. The voice repeated, help me. I followed it. Stupid. The forest grew darker with every step. The trees seemed to shift behind me, rearranging the path. I turned, and now there were 3 trail markers in a row, numbers, and then I saw him. A man, naked, pale, skin like wet paper stretched over bone. His face was mine, every detail. It smiled. I turned and ran. Branches whipped my face. I didn't care. I ran until my lungs burned. And that's when I saw the final marker. This one wasn't blank. It had a number scratched in blood. 0. Behind it was a clearing. At the center stood a tree made of bones, hundreds of human bones, fused together like roots and branches, and tied to its trunk was Chris DeMarco. He was still alive, barely, eyes wild, mouth moving silently, skin stitched with strange symbols. I tried to reach him, but my legs locked. My body wouldn't respond. Behind me, something stepped into the clearing. The mimic, the one with my face. It touched my shoulder. The world went black. I woke up at the ranger station 3 days later. They said I was found wandering barefoot at the edge of the park, dehydrated, delirious. Lisa had filed a missing report on me. They never found Chris, but I remember. I remember the tree. I remember the 3 blank markers, and the last one with the 0. And sometimes when I'm out at night near the woods, I hear footsteps behind me, matching mine, stopping when I stop, like something with my face is still following me. And I know this: if you ever find a trail marker with no number, don't keep walking. That's the last one you'll ever see. Story 9 from your forest horror series, Echoes Beneath the Rotten Canopy. There's something wrong in Tanglewood Hollow. Locals say the forest floor there never dries. Even in summer, it's damp, sticky, and rank like the earth itself is rotting from the inside out. And the old-timers whisper that if you hear someone calling your name from beneath the soil, don't answer. I didn't believe any of that until I made the mistake of joining a backwoods survival retreat with 3 other fools. It was supposed to be a bonding experience. Me, my cousin Milo, his friend Darren, and Darren's girlfriend Jess. A 3-day solo survival challenge split up with GPS watches. Rendezvous at a camp marker at the end. No phones, no help. We each entered the hollow from a different side. By the end of day 1, I already knew something was off. The moss underfoot wasn't just spongy, breathed. I swear, it expanded and contracted like a sleeping creature. Every step made a sucking sound, like I was walking on a bed of lungs. And the trees, God, the trees, they leaned inward, gnarled like old fingers, trunks twisted in a way that didn't follow gravity. Their bark peeled back in flaps, revealing pale wood beneath that looked too much like flesh. Still, I pressed on. That night, while trying to sleep in my makeshift shelter, I heard whispers. They weren't coming from the woods around me. They came from below, under the ground, soft, guttural, like someone was talking through a clogged throat. I lay frozen, heart pounding as the whispering stopped, and something tapped beneath me. 3 knocks, hollow, deliberate, like knuckles on the bottom of a wooden table. Then I heard my name, Miles. It was Milo's voice, I swear to God. Miles, help me. But it wasn't coming from the trees. It was under my tent. My gut told me it wasn't him. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. By morning, I wanted out. I started heading toward at the rendezvous point early, pushing through thick brambles and low fog that clung to my legs like fingers. The air was sour. My skin felt like it was crawling with mites. Then I saw something ahead, a boot, Milo's boot, still attached to his foot. He was sitting against a tree pale, shivering, eyes wide. Milo, he didn't respond, just stared past me, whispering over and over, "Don't listen, don't answer, don't dig." I knelt in front of him, and that's when I saw his ears were filled with dirt, crammed in like someone had packed soil deep into his head. Blood and soil trickled down his neck. His GPS watch was shattered. His fingers were raw, like he'd clawed at something hard and sharp. He blinked slowly, then met my eyes. "They live underneath." "What? Who?" Milo started to sob. "They pull the voices from your head. They use the people you know. Don't listen when the roots talk back." That's when the ground trembled. A ripple passed through the soil, like something massive shifted far below. And then came the scream. Not human, something buried. Milo stood up suddenly and shoved me hard. "Go." I ran. I didn't stop until I reached the camp marker. Jess and Darren were already there, but they looked different, too calm. Jess smiled as I staggered toward them. "Where's Milo?" "Back there," I panted. "He's not okay." "Some things." "Did he speak to you?" she asked, interrupting. I paused. "Yes." "Why?" Darren stepped forward. "Then he's gone." "What the hell are you talking about?" Jess pointed to a tree just behind the marker. Nailed into it was a board, warped with age, with the words burned into it. "If the voices rise from the roots, do not respond." Darren's face went pale. "We heard Milo last night too, but he wasn't anywhere near us." Jess added, "I thought it was you calling." We both did. That's when the ground split open. A crack appeared just feet away, wide enough to swallow a man whole. From it came whispering, shifting, skittering, and then my voice. "Miles." I backed away. Jess screamed. A hand shot out from the crack. But it wasn't a human hand. It was thin, blackened, with too many joints and skin that glistened like wet bark. It dragged something out behind it, a mockery of me. Same clothes, same face, but hollow eyes filled with roots. I grabbed Darren's knife and stabbed it in the leg. It didn't even flinch. Jess threw a flare into the crack. It hissed. The thing screamed like a pig being skinned alive and retreated. We didn't wait. We ran. We were found the next morning by rangers, trembling and caked in mud and blood. No one ever found Milo. No one ever will. No sinkholes. But I know what I heard, what I saw. There's something living beneath the hollow. It listens. It learns your name, and it wants you to answer. So, if you ever camp in a forest and the soil whispers to you from below, don't respond, or they'll pull you down too. Story 10. The girl who followed the whistle into the trees. It was a soft whistle that led Emily away. Just a faint tune floating on the wind through the trees behind her grandmother's cabin. She was only 10 when it happened, and no one ever saw her again. I wasn't there when she disappeared, but I was there the night she came back. Let me explain. My name's Leah. Emily was my cousin, and we were as close as sisters. When she vanished 5 years ago in those woods, it broke something in my aunt. Her cabin was sealed off. The woods declared dangerous, and the police gave up after 2 weeks. But the town never forgot. People claimed to hear whistling in those woods at night. Always the same tune, low, slow, almost like a lullaby. Some said it was the wind. Others swore it was the thing that took her. I didn't believe in that stuff. Not until last winter, when I agreed to house sit at my grandmother's cabin for the holidays. I figured a week in the woods would be peaceful. I could write, disconnect, maybe feel close to Emily again. I arrived just before a snowstorm hit. The roads iced over, trapping me there. Faint, distant, weaving through the trees like it was searching. It made my blood go cold. I went to the window and looked out into the forest. There was something standing at the edge of the trees, small, motionless, silhouetted by moonlight. I stared. It stared. Back then, it whistled. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I found footprints in the snow outside the cabin. Bare footprints, small, child-sized. They led straight up to my window, then vanished. I told myself it was a dream, that the cold had gotten to me. But by night 2, I knew I wasn't imagining things. I heard scratching at the back door. Not knocking, scratching, like nails across wood. When I peeked through the peephole, nothing. But when I returned to the living room, someone was standing inside. A girl, long, tangled hair, the skin the color of ash. Her eyes were gray, like fog. She smiled at me, and when she spoke, it sounded like her throat was full of dead leaves. Leah. It was Emily's voice. I should have run, but I froze, paralyzed by the face in front of me. Familiar, but wrong. Her smile too wide, her teeth cracked and jagged, her arms too long, fingers too thin. I whispered, "Emily." She tilted her head. The smile widened. I followed the whistle. She croaked, "You should too." I blinked and she was gone. I locked every door and window, but it didn't matter. At exactly 3:03 a.m., I woke up to the sound of whistling inside the cabin. It was coming from the vents. That morning, I tried to leave, but the snowstorm had buried the car. The roads were gone. Even the driveway had vanished, just white, untouched, endless. The forest pressed closer to the house like it had moved. Overnight, I knew I had to survive one more night. Just one. I set up cameras, locked everything, made salt lines like I'd read in old forums. I sat in the middle of the living room, flashlight in hand, clutching a photo of me and Emily as kids. Then the lights went out and the whistling started again. Only this time, it was all around me, outside, inside, beneath the floorboards. Then came a knock at the door. I held my breath. Another knock. Then a voice. "Leah, let me in." "It's me, Emily." Crying now, begging. "You left me out there. Don't you remember? You told me to follow the sound." My blood turned to ice. She was right. I'd forgotten it until that moment. The day Emily disappeared, I had heard the whistling too. We were playing hide and seek in the woods. I dared her to follow the sound. She smiled and she ran. I didn't stop her. The door creaked open by itself. Snow blew in. Standing in the doorway wasn't a girl anymore. It was a thing wearing her skin twisted, hollow. The real Emily, long gone. It whistled. I screamed. It opened its mouth. Inside was a forest, trees, roots, soil, and the echo of 100 trapped voices calling out from some place beneath the world. "I brought you a gift," it whispered. Then it stepped aside. Behind it, I saw me. Another layer, pale, blank-eyed, mouth sewn shut. The creature leaned in close and whispered in my ear. "Every time someone follows the whistle, a piece of them stays." I woke up the next morning on the floor. Door was closed. No footprints, no sign of snow. The sky was clear. The car started without issue. I left, never looked back. But some nights, when it's quiet, I hear it again. The whistle, low, gentle, inviting. Sometimes it sounds like Emily. Sometimes it sounds like me. Whatever that thing was, it's still out there, still calling. So, if you ever hear a whistle in the woods, soft and distant, like a lullaby meant just for you, don't follow it, because if you do, something might come back in your place. If you think the horror ends here, you're wrong. Tell me, what would you have done differently? Drop your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe for more true nightmares from the shadows. New terror drops every week. Welcome to Fear and Tale.